Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You guys doing other work on your house this summer or on your other projects?
Yeah.
That's
So they were like,
Yeah.
like, you were kind of here. I was like, take my van down
We're in the, were you up in the chalets?
We were in like the townhouse.
Oh, the town, okay. We stayed,
It's cool.
yeah, this time we decided to stay in the chalets and we burned a few more points.
Yeah. We, on that trip, we went down, which I've been there.
All right. Hi, everyone.
Yes.
Thanks so much for coming today. I'm Whitney. I'm on the City Club board, and today we have Andy Vobora here from Traveling County to kind of give us a visitor industry overview and what it's looking like in our area. So I'll let you take it away.
I love it. Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk about travel and tourism here in Lane County. I thought what I would do today is provide a little bit of background on who we are as an organization. Don't want to assume that everybody knows who Travel Lane County is. Get into some statistics about the visitor industry in Lane County and our state, and delve into a few other little data points on kind of who is a typical traveler to Oregon, and then talk a little more specifically about our target markets and some campaigns that we've been working on, because most of our work is done outside of the region, and you'll learn why here as we move through this. Right. There we go. So a little history about our organization. We are a 501c6, same as the Chamber of Commerce, so a partnership-based organization. So businesses choose to partner with us. Most of them are your typical travel and tourism kind of businesses like hotels and restaurants, but we have a pretty broad membership base, a lot of nonprofits and arts organizations and such. And we were formed to do this work initially for Eugene and Springfield. It was a contract with the Chambers of Commerce. And then it became countywide. And when the funding sources kind of got broadened and the lodging tax was enacted. And so we've been around for a long time doing this work. And we, even though our name is Travel Lane County, we're not part of the county. We are just a private nonprofit, but we have a grant agreement with Lane County. It's a 3-year rolling grant agreement. If they like what we're doing, they add another year on, and we continue to exist. At some point, if they decided to do something different, they could take that money and do something different, and our organization would cease to exist, which would be very sad for the 23 of us that work there. We have a 30-member board of directors, plus another 10 ex officio members. And so our board is broad because we have a huge region to market. And so we have geographic representation and then some designated seats within certain industry sectors, and then also some of our governmental partners. But it's a really great board, very active, and we appreciate all of them and the hard work that they do for us. Wanted just to briefly touch on primarily our mission, and it's pretty simple, which is to increase overnight stays. And the better we are at doing that, bringing people into our region and staying overnight, the better we do financially in terms of having more resources to then do that work. And so there are some other things that we'd like to see ourselves doing, but that's our primary mission. And we have a lot of partners that help us with that. It's certainly not something that we shoulder on our own. We're part of a team, and that team starts at the top with Travel Oregon. So Travel Oregon, there's a 1.5% statewide lodging tax. That goes to Travel Oregon to do their work. And so they market the state of Oregon to the rest of the United States and to the rest of the world. And they're an award-winning organization. They really do great work up there. And then Sport Oregon, specifically on kind of sports at a statewide level, they focus mostly on well, it's broad, but if you're hearing things like around MLB coming to Portland or something, Sport Oregon will be at that table working on those kinds of issues. The regional programs also funded out of the money that Travel Oregon collects. There are 7 different regions in the state. So they break the state into these 7 regions, and we overlap with 2 of those. One of the regions is the Willamette Valley. The second whole region is the entire Oregon coast. And then the rest of the state is broken into 5 other regions. But we overlap with 2 of them because of the size and the configuration of our county. The regional programs, what their goal is to really think about those regions, what's unique to those regions, and market them as a region. And so with like the Willamette Valley region over the years, it was really focused on what was common up and down the valley, which was the wine growing region, primary wine growing region for the state, even though now it's really statewide. And so they've broadened that a little bit. On the coast, while they do some marketing, they're also working much harder on the management side and really helping to develop the business environment there. And a big piece of their effort is around trying to get more of the local seafood that's brought in on the Oregon coast to stay in Oregon. Right now, 90% of it's shipped worldwide instead of staying right here. And so it's kind of crazy, we're bringing stuff in and we're shipping stuff out, and it's like, let's build that ecosystem. So they're doing a lot of work on the coast around that kind of work. Then we get down to regional destination marketing or kind of more specific destination marketing organizations like Travel Lane County. And there's a lot of these throughout the state, whether it's, Visit Salem or Visit Bend, Travel Portland. They're tasked with marketing a specific region, and some it's just citywide, like Salem, even though they go outside the city limits a little bit in their marketing. For us, we've got a county the size of Connecticut, so we've got a broad county that we get to market, and we feel very lucky about that. Sometimes it creates some challenges, but overall, it's great to be able to market a county this size with the diversity it has going from the coast to the Cascades. We work with all 10 chambers of commerce. We have reciprocal memberships with all 10 chambers. Some of those chambers, like Springfield here, act as a visitor center as well. Probably the most active chamber visitor center is the one in Florence because of the traffic up and down 101. But we really appreciate the opportunity to work with our chambers of commerce because we have a lot of the same members, for one, but they also fill in some gaps that that we might need to do if they weren't doing it. And so a lot of that's around some of the training and education programs that we really appreciate and can leverage and share out with our members so that they can take advantage of it if they're not chamber partners. We always encourage our partners to become chamber members as well. And then we get down to the businesses. And again, we're a partnership organization, but we're having a really interesting discussion about probably 40% or more of destination marketing organizations like ours have gone to a non-paid model. And there's good reason for that, but we've also always had a really strong partnership model. But we're kind of going through that analysis to see what the benefits would be to maybe have a hybrid. And so there might be a free point of entry with very limited benefits, and then people would kind of buy up to additional benefits. And the reason that is becoming more challenging is, as a marketing organization, if you have somebody that's not a partner, we always want to market our partners first and highlight them in our content. But then if you've got certain other kind of groups in the community that you want to be able to highlight to all visitors, it becomes a little challenging for the staff. So we're going through that right now and trying to figure out, what that model change might look like, with a target of maybe doing something in early 2024. So it's a really busy chart, but I just wanted to highlight again how important this industry is to Lane County. We're a traded sector economy, so we got a lot of people bringing money in from outside the county into the county as they travel here. And I would just kind of highlight here in 2020 the impact of COVID. So we were a little bit over $1 billion in travel and tourism spending going into COVID, and we took about a 50% hit. that 1 year, but we also came back super quick, a lot quicker than a lot of other regions, and there's a few reasons for that, but and we've continued to grow. So this data is an econometric model done by Dean Runyon and Associates. They do it for states all over the United States and down to the county level, so we can get some really kind of good information about how much spending is going on. And what we really like to see is how it distributes throughout the economy. A lot of people think that, a visitor comes and most of their money is spent, on their hotel room, which these days are expensive. But typically the hotel or accommodations portion of a visitor spend is about 20%. And this last year was a little bit higher, and there's some reasons for that. But really most of the spending, gets spread out, but a bulk of it is in food and beverage. So whether you're buying packaged food, you have visiting family and friends and relatives coming, you go to the grocery store and you stock up and feed them and get them drinks, or they're coming and staying in commercial lodging and going out to restaurants and breweries and distilleries and all those good things. That's where the biggest part of the visitor dollar is spent. And we've got some great assets for that here locally. So we like to see how that spreads throughout the economy. So as people come here and they stay in commercial lodging, they pay the lodging tax, and you can see we were on a pretty good growth trend there for a long time, and it's starting to flatten a little bit, and then COVID happened. It took a bite out of it, but not as much as you might have thought, and that was because we have a destination that's very kind of open, and so like the coast, Florence, had 2 of their best years in terms of lodging during COVID, because people were like, I can staycation, I can go to the coast, get away from people, wander around on the beach and be safe. And so we didn't take quite as big a hit as we might have anticipated. And you can see how quickly it came back. And in fiscal year 22, that was a really interesting kind of growth. It just sort of blew all of us away at how quickly that came back. And just to put this into context, these lodging taxes are based on those receipts that are coming in through commercial lodging, which is a factor of 2 things. It's room demand, how many rooms are being sold, but it's also room rate. So during COVID, the hotels took a big hit. There was nobody going to a lot of these hotels. They had to lay off a lot of staff. And so I think coming out of it, what we saw was rate went through the roof. And you're seeing a lot of that now, and even with the USATF meet here in town, and if you saw some of the news stories, they're kind of grumbling about the rates they're finding here. Well, yeah, they're a little inflated, but I can tell you, you go to like Estes Park, Colorado, it's $1,200 average a night. $700, $800 in a lot of destinations. I just came back from Nashville, and it's high everywhere. It's not unique to Eugene. So I think those hotels, and while we have these conversations with our hotel partners each and every year around rate, they got to do what they got to do to, try to recover from what they just went through in COVID. And, we try to get them to think about the long run, especially when we're bidding on sporting events and conventions and trying to get that business to come back. We want people to have a good experience, and part of that is around rate. And if they don't feel like, if they feel like they're getting gouged, they're probably not going to come back. That's all to say, the kind of taxes that benefit all of our communities have gone up quite a bit. You can see these red bars for the, starting in 2022, and our fiscal year ended in June. So that big spike that I just showed you in this previous chart, that did not include the World Athletics Championships in July of 2022. That was a new fiscal year. And so that's in this current fiscal year that just ended June 30th. And so you can just see that even leading into that summer with all the big track meets in the World Athletics Championships, as far back, as those early parts of 2022, we were doing really well in terms of lodging taxes. And it continued into the fall, and then we don't have any data October through December, and that's because the county had contracted with the city of Eugene to be the collection agent for lodging taxes countywide. So all the commercial properties would send all their their tax payments to the city of Eugene. They would process them, give them to the county, distribute them back out to the different entities. And that was done on a monthly basis. So we got really good data like this. And the county decided last year to start working with the Department of Revenue at the state. And so all of a sudden we got no revenue, and the state collects quarterly. And so they said, well, after the first quarter of the calendar year, January through March, sometime in April, you'll get your first check. So fortunately, we had reserves, or because we had no revenue for 6 months. And we were used to getting a check every single month. And all of the people that got lodging taxes were in the same boat. So we don't have any data like that anymore. And we're trying to work with our partners to get their quarterly reports so that we can start generating some kind of data sets to track this. But so far, we don't have that data yet. The same information, just kind of shown on a fiscal year basis. I wanted to show this because it highlights this trough in the winter. Again, we get most of our visitations May through October, and then it really starts to fall off in the shoulder seasons. Super hard on hotels and restaurants in particular. Be able to keep staff year round when on the coast, your room demand drops to 30%, when it's at 90%, in the summertime. So trying to keep staff employed, it makes it really challenging for them. And so this winter demand trough is something that the board has been thinking a lot about, and we'll talk more about that later on, like how do we come up with some demand generators in the middle of winter that will really help sustain the economy through that period of time. So threw in a couple charts here, just, this is pretty intuitive. Most of the hotel rooms in the county, or about half of them, are in Eugene. So that's who generates most of the tax revenue. Springfield, has the next biggest chunk, and you kind of see how it breaks down throughout the county there. How that money goes back out, it gets a little more complicated. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this other than to say, we get 2.1 points to do our work. But then the county supports a lot of the capital work that they do. They send money back out to the rural areas, and then the cities, these cities are highlighted in this chart because each of our incorporated cities has the ability to add on to the lodging tax. And each of these 4 cities, Florence, Cottage Grove, Springfield, and Eugene, have added on a percentage. So their rates for, their hotels are a little bit higher. They keep all of that in addition to a portion of the countywide tax, which is now 10%. So now I'm going to just jump into some new data that we're getting. This just came out, so I just pulled the high-level stuff for the state, and we're drilling down to kind of cull out the Lane County specific information. But Travel Oregon's been doing an Oregon visitor profile study, and like who are the visitors who come here, what are their demographics, all sorts of really good information. We just got this. So I pulled out just a few charts that I thought were kind of interesting, and this is by age. And so this is going back to 2017, and then this most recent study. And what it shows is that the people who are coming here traveling are older, they're getting older. And so you can kind of see that in those last 2 areas really kind of growing in terms of the age of the visitors here.
It's the same people, just that many years later.
Yeah, that's for sure.
17 and now they're 51. Sorry.
So the national average is like 47 years. Oregon's average visitor is 51 years of age. You can see mostly boomers. Any thoughts on why we're seeing this trend?
They're retiring.
And they got a ton of money.
Yep.
And there's some other subsets of the boomers that we're focusing on in some of our work that I'll talk about in a little bit, and that's people with disabilities. And people with disabilities want to be able to travel more, but accessibility for them, depending on what their disability is a real challenge. And the destinations that are accommodating that stand to just go to the bank on it, because that group, that subset alone of the boomers has over $1.5 trillion to spend. And they like to travel, but they got to have accommodations to be able to make it, a good experience. this shouldn't be a surprise based on what we were just looking at. If they're older, they don't have children. They're not bringing children with them anymore because they don't have children. Maybe they'll start bringing their grandchildren. But so, you know, the number of children traveling in the party dropped quite a bit. And one of the things when I first saw this, I thought, I wonder, you know, was this skewed a little bit by, you know, the World Athletics Championships or some of those big events coming here? And it was actually, most of the surveying was done prior to that. So it wasn't like that big event, you know, kind of skewed the data. And then this, again, shouldn't be a surprise because it correlates to what we were just talking about. I mean, that is significant. You know, 2017, you know, it wasn't that long ago, and look at, you know, how much more money the people that are traveling have in terms of income. So we're going to learn more about that, and we'll be able to share some Lane County data out as we kind of pull out the Lane County data again. And we want to try to get it down to even like Springfield city level kind of information if we can, if they got enough samples in their survey data to make it, you know, valid. I'm going to transition a little bit, talk about our 3 target markets. So in our work in terms of destination marketing and marketing Lane County, we have these 3 target markets: tourism, which is your leisure traveler, people going on vacation, conventions, and specifically convention planners, and the same with sports planners. And within sports, it's a bigger world because we have the university and they have their own kind of engine in terms of sports. So a lot of our sports work, while we work on some of these big events and are supportive and help with specific elements of, you know, doing bids for like USATF meet and things like that, mostly around hotels. The sports we're working on are volleyball tournaments, you know, triathlons, and we'll talk about some other specific ones that you might not be aware of that go on here in this region. But as each of these, and while this extended customer journey kind of graphic is specific to tourism, the convention and sports has a very similar kind of journey with their planners, which is it starts with inspiration. And so we've got to get people's attention and get them thinking about, ooh, maybe I should go there on vacation, or maybe I should take my convention to Eugene Springfield. And then we have to have a lot of good tools for them to do research. And so our own tools in terms of our website and other materials we'll talk more about. And we just kind of take them through the whole journey, and hopefully it fulfills itself. And so I wanted us to talk a little bit about leisure to start with. Our current campaign is around this tagline of come and stay. So we want people to come, but we want them to stay, not stay permanently necessarily, but as Tom McCall would say, right? Come and visit, don't stay. But we really wanted to play up on this. And so again, our marketing is done through our owned channels, our earned media, and our paid media. And so in terms of paid media, we have what we call always on, you know, and a lot of this is digital. We do some print, and we'll talk about a specific outdoor campaign that's been real successful. But so you've got this always on, you know, just getting this out in front of people. And then we have what we call campaign pulses, and we'll talk a little bit about this current one. But that just gives you a sense of the design of the current leisure campaign. And actually, before I leave that, the reason a lot of people maybe aren't even familiar with Travel Lane County, what we do is almost all of this is done outside the area. So we have a 500-mile drive market, and then we have direct fly markets, which the airport has done a great job, you know, expanding the air service we have here. And so that opens up new markets for us to do targeted marketing in. And so, you know, locally, you're not really necessarily seeing all of this because it's all targeted out there to bring people here. But my work is local. Vice President of Stakeholder Relations, I'm talking to the local audiences, and I've had a little tiny budget to do some things locally. But I've been pressing the organization harder and harder, especially after what we learned in COVID, when we really saw some great benefits from, you know, encouraging people just to do staycations, get out and learn about Lane County, because it's such a big county. A lot of people have never experienced it. And so you're seeing this more and more with organizations like ours focusing a little bit more locally as well. And so we have what we call this Explore campaign that we started this spring. We did some co-op opportunities with some of our partners through KMTR. We've done some print placements, and then this top one is a billboard placement. So there's a big electronic billboard as you come off Washington Jefferson Street Bridge that rotates. And so we did a whole Explore campaign with all 10 of our communities. And so those rotate through there. We're going to continue to do that throughout the year and expand on that a little bit, but I'm happy to see that we're able to kind of focus a little bit more locally as well. This is a print ad that was in Eugene Magazine, their summer edition, and it was also in Oregon Family Magazine, and will be in a couple other publications. Okay, so in terms of data and how we kind of determine where we want to place this media, we have a new platform called Zartico. It's a company that aggregates data from a lot of different sources and provides us some really good insights. And we're, I don't know, 9 months into having this contract and still learning all the power behind it and how to kind of read all the data. And I know some of these are going to be a little bit hard to see, so I'll kind of interpret some of them for you. I just pulled out a few examples specific to Springfield. So top 5 visitor spend compared to visitation. So of the people that are coming to Springfield visiting, you know, what are the top 5 destinations? And Portland is big. So they're about a third of the folks. And Portland's a big market for us. I mean, again, it's close by, but people, it's pretty easy for us to pull them out of there and get them down into our region. So, and what their average spend when they come here is $208. Seattle Tacoma is next. The metro area is pulled in here because we have people just coming around and spending money within the region as well. But then you see the San Francisco Bay Area and LA, those are the top destinations for people when they're in market. And so this data is gathered in a couple of different ways. First of all of our cell phones are tracked. So we know where people are coming from when they're here, and we know whether or not they're local or they're visitor, depending on how long their cell phone is in market. And then secondly, credit card data. So we know how much they spend. And so those are 2 of the kind of main sources. And what is really cool about it is we can see once they do get here from these destinations is where they travel throughout the destination. And that really helps kind of tell us some other good information about what those points of interest are. And so here's some of the spend data on last year and this year, and it's pretty messy, but so the lighter blue is last year and then this year, and it just shows us spend data by each month throughout the year and how much is being spent by those visitors. And you know, the peak in the summer, in the fall makes sense again. Some of those key points of interest, the shops at Gateway, people like to shop, right? So that comes up high. Another McKinsey Crossing Shopping Center, Walmart, Peace Hill Sacred Heart shows up a lot. So, you know, it's a regional medical center. So people are coming here for medical reasons. And then on down the line. And what's that?
That's all me right there.
And then I pulled another one. So that first one was all the visitors. And then this one is on primary points of interest if they had come to our website first. So we could see if they came to our website first and then came and visited, did it change where they went? And it does. I mean, the shops, Gateway still #1. Peace Health moves up to #2, but then you start seeing Bob Kiefer Center. People are coming here for those sporting events and things. Holiday Inn, Hamlin Sports Center, the Public House. So you start to see some other points of interest after they've gone to our site and done some research. Okay, so we take this information and we say, okay, we look at this for the whole region, not just for Springfield, and we see that people who are coming out of the San Francisco Bay Area tend to spend a lot more. they're not as high a percentage of people that are coming here, but when they're here, they spend a lot more money. So we're like, maybe we get some more of those people here and they're going to spend the money. And so we came up with a campaign that's a billboard campaign. So we have 5 billboards in the San Francisco Bay Area. I think 2 of them are just printed static billboards and 3 of them are electronic. And around the electronic ones, what we can do is geofence around them. And so as somebody goes through that geofence and passes that billboard, it captures their cell phone information and we can retarget them with our messaging. And so suddenly then when they log into the San Francisco Chronicle, oh, lo and behold, look, escape your commute, because we know they saw that billboard and we can remarket to them and they're going, oh, and then hopefully they click on it. And so this has generated about 9,000 click-throughs per month for this 3-month run we did this spring. And so then once they do that and we see that they've clicked through, we can see what they're looking at on our site and what they're interested in. We can again continue to remarket to them, and then we can actually follow them through the whole booking process if they actually book a trip here. So it's all creepy stuff, I know, but we're doing it all for good. We're not doing it for creepy reasons. So we want them to come here and have a great experience. So that's just a little bit about how we're taking this data that we're getting through Zartico and then being able to apply it to a specific campaign. I want to talk just a little bit about, I mentioned owned channels. So our integrated marketing team develops our website, all of our content. A lot of people contribute to that throughout the organization, but we have a lot of good digital assets in terms of thousands and thousands of photos, hundreds of hours of B-roll that again, we make available to all of our partners in the community for highlighting the region. And the website was just updated and relaunched this spring. So it's the first update in like more than a decade. So took a lot of work, but really excited about the new functionality. So if you haven't been on our site, we encourage you to go there and check it out. We have a really robust events calendar, and that's available to anybody in the community or in the region to put it in events. You don't have to be a partner to submit events to the event calendar. We want that to be as full as possible so visitors know everything that's happening here. But there's just a lot of functionality there. And the interesting thing about websites, DMO websites, as Google, has just done what they do, and they just command that kind of search space. And a lot of DMOs just saw their visits just going through the floor. But our staff, again, they update content all the time. They're always refreshing videos and photos and doing a super good job of just getting our site out there and making sure that organically it comes to the top when people search this area. And we've actually grown our visitation. So we just finished the fiscal year, and I didn't pull the number, I should have, but it was probably right around 1.3 million unique users, different individuals who have come to our site over the last 12 months. So it gets a lot of eyeballs on it, and we're excited to see how this new site continues to function. So second target market, conventions, wanted just to pull out some kind of year-end numbers. This is the area that has been the most challenging, but is also the most exciting, I think, in terms of seeing how quickly the travel and tourism industry has bounced back, really without conventions being a part of it. Our state, as we all know, was pretty locked down compared to a lot of states. So a lot of conventions were still happening. They were happening in Arizona or other states that were a little bit more open during COVID. And so we lost some business, and then we rebooked a bunch, but in future years. And so our staff is always working 1, 2, 3, 5 years out in terms of booking business. And so we've just had a really good year in terms of that interest in people coming back here. And so this is just a few stats on number of confirmed events they got this year, the number of room nights that represents, the estimated economic impact. And like a lot of areas, the cost of airfare and lodging is driving some of those decisions here. But also we're a little bit limited right now. We already have limited conference space anyway. We've been talking for a couple of decades about adding more conference space to get us to kind of that next level, so we can, do a 300 to 500 person conference. But to go to that next level up, we just don't have the space for it. And so then on top of it, you have a fire at Valley River, and they shut down for most of the year, and that's really been a challenge as well. Not only, again, when you lose hundreds of rooms during big events like what's happening this week, but just not having the conference space. So those conversations are still going on, and we're excited to see maybe what happens over here in Glenwood. Maybe they'll have a little more conference space. The city of Eugene just updated their urban renewal district and renewed that, and conference space is still on the list, possibly there. And so we just feel like no matter where it is, we'll be able to sell it. And again, in conventions, this doesn't really represent everything that's going on in our community, because a lot of these conference hotels, like Graduate, they have their own sales staff. Hilton Garden Inn, so they have little meetings going on. There's always meetings and things going on that aren't represented here. This is just stuff that our staff has had their fingers in. Some sports events. So I mentioned kind of different kinds of sports. Rowing, we have one of the premier rowing sites in the Northwest, really probably in the western half of the United States, in Dexter Reservoir. People love to row there. It's just ideally situated. And so we've hosted some pretty good events over the years, some repeat events like this US Rowing, the Masters Championships, but we had the Pac-12 Rowing Championships here this year. I think we'll continue to try to leverage that, and I'll talk about destination development in a minute and how we can maybe bolster that through some development work. We also had the PDGA, the Professional Disc Golf Association US Masters here this spring. We have a bunch of disc golf courses around the region, and some really good ones. And a lot of people don't know about that, but these kind of niche sports are huge. If we can get that pickleball facility built at LCC, it's going to be another one where we could host, national or international events. So those bring a lot of people again to the region, and you don't always hear about it because it's competing with USATF or Oregon football or whatever. But that's a lot of the work our team is doing in the Sports Commission, is cultivating those relationships and trying to get those events to come back. Another one was we just held one of the U.S. Nationals at the Emerald Valley BMX. They do a great job there as well. This ad here, I'm going to just show you the KMTR co-op advertising package we did. This will just give you a flavor for what that looked like and how we applied it to our Sports Commission. Do you need to start that?
I think I do.
Okay.
Explore sports in the Eugene, Cascades, and Coast region, and help us welcome hundreds of rowers and fans for the U.S. Rowing Northwest Masters Regional Championships. Head out to Dexter Reservoir on June 23rd through 25th to see some of the best Masters class rowers in the country compete in this exciting regatta. Come out and explore rowing.
It wasn't that choppy when I played that. So, but that just gives you a sense of that Explore campaign. So we kind of had the intro and the exit, and then we had either our own messaging or Jay Scott on Fifth did one, the Fifth Street Market did one, a couple other partners. And so those were all playing April through June, kind of leading into the summer to support that Explore campaign. So destination development, I wanted just to touch on a couple of things here. So organizations like ours have always, or not always, but been kind of termed destination marketing organizations. So we market the region, but more and more we're becoming destination marketing and management organizations. Part of that was, leading up to COVID, some of the tourist areas in our region, not so much. Throughout the rest of the state, there's some hot spots, and then around the world, there's some real severe examples of kind of over tourism. And so when COVID happened and everybody kind of took a step back and gave everybody a chance to sort of take a big, deep breath and say, is this what we want going forward, or do we need to do something different with our destinations in terms of management so that we're not over-loving kind of some of the beautiful areas that we have? And again, we don't have too much of that. We got a little bit up around Blue Pool, up on the McKenzie River Trail, but not too much, not like Multnomah Falls, where they've had to, put in a ticketing system and a shuttle system and things like that, or Painted Hills, or some of the other kind of iconic spots in Oregon. So, wanted just to highlight a couple of projects that sort of fall into this destination development and management area. The first is really thinking about accessibility. So I talked about before how much money people with disabilities have to spend. Our region, and especially Eugene Springfield, from a physical accessibility standpoint, is pretty good. LTD was one of the first, or the first transit district in the nation to be fully lift equipped for people with disabilities. And so that's great. I think the cities have really made a commitment to infrastructure, sidewalks, curb cuts, all those things that you go to other communities where I was just in Nashville, and if I was in a wheelchair in Nashville, I don't think I'd want to be out and about on the streets. But around here, you can get places. We're a little bit behind, I think, in some of the accessibility features in our hotels. Some of them just haven't quite made some of the accessibility investments they probably could capitalize on. But hearing loops, we started working with Geneva Ralph at the Shed, because they put together the Loop Lane Committee, and they've been really advocating for hearing loops in facilities. The Shed concert hall was one of the first things to be fully looped. And so if you're not familiar with hearing loops, it's a technology. So people have hearing aids or cochlear implants. It's a loop that kind of just envelops the room, and through the microphone, then somebody with a hearing loss hears that sound directly into their hearing devices. And it's a game changer. I have a very slight hearing loss, but I just started using them about 2 months ago. And the first time I was in like the Shed or down at Cottage Theater, and you're at a play and you can hear all of the dialogue. My wife missed some of it because she's just listening through the sound system, and I'm hearing it like somebody's talking in my head. And so it's a game changer for people with disabilities. And so we thought, well, what could we do? So we went to this committee and said, listen, we're going to budget some money. And then we wrote a grant and got some additional money for Travel Oregon to put hearing loop systems primarily at front desks at hotels, because we were thinking that's the first interaction a lot of visitors have, is checking in. And if they don't get good information there, that could really affect their whole visit. And so these systems are pretty inexpensive, and we're offering these to our hotels and attractions, and we're picking up 80% of the cost. We're asking them to put up 20%. So at a hotel front desk system like that would cost the hotel owner $240, and we're going to cover the rest of it. It's about a $1,200 cost. And so we've got about 20 some hotels so far. We worked with Shelton McMurphy Johnson House. They have a little different system because they have a tour guided sort of system that they use. And we're looking at working with the Museum of Natural and Cultural History. They have a room about this size where they do some group meetings, and then continuing to work with hotels. So hearing loops is one thing that we thought, if we really can get behind this, get a lot of our hotels looped, and then a lot of the other performance venues, they're a little more expensive. We have a great asset in a guy named Alan from Hearing Support Solutions that does the assessments, orders the equipment, and installs it. We held our visitor industry celebration at the venue 252 in their big room, and he temporarily looped it for me for the meeting, just for the conference. And then to do it permanently is about a $10,000 investment. So it's a little bit more expensive, but it can be a game changer. So we're going to continue to work on that. Second thing we did this last fall is we wanted to look at, was there a way to give better information about trail accessibility? We have so many great hiking trails. So Willamette Valley Visitor Association, Travel Lane County helped fund a project through the Environmental Leadership Program at the U of O. And so the students group went out and did trail assessments in terms of slope and all sorts of data points. And it's not to say, oh, this trail is accessible or this trail is not accessible. That's a decision up to the person and their abilities, whether it's you or I or somebody in a wheelchair. They just need the information. So what we're hoping for is it gives us the tools, and actually Thurston Hills Recreation Area, the natural area out here, has a really good, I think, sign that gives some of that accessibility information about the trails out there. And that was my hope in kind of coming up with this idea of working with the university to do this work is, can we come up with some standardization in terms of that information that's at the trailhead? And sometimes when you're working with the National Forest and the BLM and then City Parks and Rec or whatever, everybody has different sign standards and everybody wants to do it differently. And our hope is that we can maybe standardize that and then use that statewide. So we'll see how that, we just got the report. They just finished here a couple of weeks ago. Cycling investments. Cycling in Oregon is hundreds of millions of dollars of economic impact. So we have the Oregon Scenic Bikeways program that's administered through the state parks. If you're not familiar with that, there's 17 designated scenic bikeways. So people are more familiar with scenic byways, which are the designated car travel routes. But we have 17 scenic bikeways that have been designated. They do a bunch of analysis. Kind of the sections need to meet certain criteria. We have a couple, three, part of one and two full ones in Lane County, or I guess I shouldn't say that. So the Willamette Valley Scenic Bikeway, which actually is the longest one in Oregon, that's 134 miles, comes down the Willamette Valley, comes down through Coburg, it kind of ends at Coburg into the metro area. A lot of the other ones are shorter. So the old McKenzie Highway, Highway 242, up and over into Sisters, that's a scenic bikeway. And then the Covered Bridges Scenic Bikeway, which is the Row River Trail in Cottage Grove, is a designated scenic bikeway, which is a fantastic cycling facility. We're hoping that the off-to-high Forest Road 19 between Oak Ridge and McKenzie Bridge will become the next designated. We're really close to getting them to sign off on that one. But those in and of themselves generate tons of spending. People want to go just experience those bikeways, but then cycling throughout Oregon is huge anyway. And so we started a project with a bunch of partners a number of years ago called Connect Lane, with this vision that it's great to have these little segments, but in Lane County, we really wanted to bolster the ability of people to travel between, especially our rural communities, but really connect all of the communities in Lane County through a system of wayfinding that we call Connect Lane. And so we started with connecting McKenzie Bridge to Oak Ridge via the Ofterhide. And so we've got these wayfinding signs that will lead you to get to that area, but then all of a sudden you're on National Forest. Oh, you can't put any signs up in the National Forest, which on that road, it's not a big deal because you're not going to get lost. Once you're on that road, there's no way off of it. You're going to end up at the other end. And so it's really getting you to it, and then at the other end, getting you off it into downtown Oak Ridge. So that was going to be Connect Lane 1. And then we were going to go Oak Ridge to Cottage Grove as Connect Lane 2. And we got those signs up. And again, these use roads that are sometimes paved, sometimes gravel. And so it's not for everybody. But, for cyclists that want to have a really unique experience, it gives them a way to not be riding on state highways, which are really dangerous. And to ride these other roads and then, have a whole planned itinerary around, staying in these rural communities as they travel throughout the county. So that's the vision. Then COVID happens and everything kind of grinds to a halt. And so we're just picking this project back up, and we've got all the routes mapped for all of Lane County, with the exception, with Florence being kind of a future stage and how to get to and from Florence, which is a little more challenging. So rowing, I mentioned rowing out at Dexter. This is an example of one of the floating docks that they use during competition, but then these docks, they're like giant Legos. They all kind of connect together, and you can create big long docks for docking or viewing platforms. And so we're working with them to kind of build up that infrastructure to be able to host more events. The other things we had to do for some of those big events was, get Wi-Fi out there so they could stream the the competitions and things like that. So those are the things that our sports commission staff and our destination development staff are working on. And then I talked about that trough in the winter, where we're really trying to find a winter demand generator. And so we've been working for a number of years now on a multi-use indoor sports facility that could host tournaments, but also serve our kids and even adult leagues throughout the year. And so that's a whole nother presentation. I'm happy to answer questions about that if you're not familiar with it. Sportsforallseasons.org is a website you can go to learn more about that project, but right now it's sort of on pause as the county continues to look at an outdoor stadium at the fairgrounds. So with that, I'm going to stop. Got a couple minutes for questions, right? We're good? Okay.
I just wondered, in the stats that you were going through, and you mentioned Portland several times, and people, that's a destination for people. I'm curious the impact that Bend has had on drawing people in, and because Bend has become such an attraction and such a destination. Bend sisters, just everything that goes on over there now that didn't used to exist when we were kids.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to go there. So I just wondered if we know the impact of, or if we're watching the impact of how much Bend draws people through or to.
Their influence on bringing people over this way. We haven't looked at that yet. We do know that obviously there's some things, especially right at the kind of the crest of the Cascades. And so in terms of people coming over into Oak Ridge for events or going the other way, we do know that obviously there's some of that going on, but no, we haven't really looked at that specifically. But yeah, I mean, they've obviously blown up over there.
Andy, you mentioned the need for some sort of additional convention space. From Trumbull County's perspective, what is the extent of the availability of hotel space? Do we need substantial additional hotel space or fine?
It's probably one of those things that depends on the time of year. Again, if we have more convention space, we can sell that in the winter, and that helps all of our hotels locally that do have the capacity in the winter currently. But going back to that issue around rate, we can get more control on rate if we can solve the winter demand issue. Because again, then they can survive, during the winter time and not feel like they got to jack the rates up during this kind of busy season of the summer all the time. So that would really help, and it would incentivize, I think, some of these hotels to build more hotels. We went through this little period where we gained about 500 to 700 rooms when Hyatt Place was built and the Even Hotel and some of the newer ones that you're familiar with. And then in the subsequent years, over the last few years, we've lost 500 rooms because of, the Guest House Inn, which is not a great property, but it closed. It was going kind of downhill quick anyway, but it closed. But then others, the county bought for like the Red Lion on Broadway for fire evacuees, first of all, and then now for longer term use. For homeless and other things. And so they bought several hotels through that Project Turnkey program that the state had. So
we do have a question from Zoom, Andy.
Sure.
I'll ask and unmute himself and go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Lynn. Thanks, City Club. Thank you, Chamber. Thanks, Paige, for putting all this on every Thursday. Hey, Andy, really awesome presentation. Really appreciate you being here and sharing with us. Hey, so I come from a parks and recreation background. So with your experience and knowledge in our local tourism sector, what type of advice could you give to a parks and recreation programmer? So I work within athletics at Willamette Lane, and I'm just trying to get some suggestions and some advice from you. Oh, and I do appreciate, so I'm a huge disc golf enthusiast, Andy, so I appreciate you mentioning that. I'm trying to grow the sport here, and we should work together.
yeah, we'll get you hooked up with JB and our sports commission. First and foremost, I mean, Willamette Lane just been a tremendous partner of ours. One of the biggest volleyball tournaments in the region happens in the winter time again, where, we've got thousands of hotel room nights, and it wouldn't be possible unless folks like Lama Lane made their space available, and we worked with the U of O at getting the Mashofsky Center. So, yeah, I think there's more opportunities, and there's other examples of the Lama Lane with some other collegiate, kind of lower level collegiate soccer and volleyball tournaments. And so I think, I know the challenge for Parks and Rec is that, they have a customer base that they have to be responsible to, people that are paying to be part of that want access to the facility, and then, we're trying to sell it for tournaments. And so I know that can be challenging, and that's one of the advantages of us hopefully being able to build a large multi-use indoor facility for the region down the road. So, yeah, I think, just connecting with I don't have any kind of preconceived ideas on specifics with Parks and Rec, but I think that, our sports commission staff, who's now about a year into their tenure, we have all new people that are super energetic and looking for opportunities to partner in the community. And the more we can do that, I think the better off we'll all be in terms of increasing those opportunities to get kids involved and host tournaments here locally.
Thanks, Alan. Andy.
Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, so at the start of your presentation, you mentioned overnight stays as I think your key metric of success. You also talked about a shift towards more perhaps local and regional advertising that you've been working on recently. Given that some of those folks are more likely maybe to do a day trip, how do you measure that impact and that success?
Yeah, I mean, some of that comes from the Dean Runyon data. So if you look at that report, it'll tell us, that we had about 3.1 million overnight stays and they measure on a calendar year for 2022. And then we have another probably 3 million day trips. And so what designates, a visitor trip as well is interesting. So somebody has to travel over 50 miles to be considered a visitor. So if you were to drive to Florence, we would be a day visitor for the day over there. And so, we just have a lot of opportunities for day visits between everything that we have to offer in lots of our communities, in the arts world, the fairs and festivals that go on this time of year. And so I don't know if that answered your question, but ask it again if I missed it. There's something else there, but I got kind of off on a tangent there.
Yeah, no, I think that helps. I'm just kind of trying to understand how do you track if your efforts are having an impact.
Yeah, I mean, again, some of the data we get through the Zartico information will show us, again, whether it's a visitor or it's a local resident and how they're moving around as well. So we get a lot of that data. Again, we try to pull out the visitor data because that's driving our key metrics again. But we still get kind of the data. So we can see kind of what are those points of interest that people are traveling to. Yes.
I have a question. Annie Laurel Sparrow with the city. I'm curious with the change from Eugene to the Oregon Department of Revenue, and now you aren't getting that data and the revenue on a monthly basis. You clearly stated you had enough in reserve to make the gap, but has that changed just your business process or model anyway? Like, because you're not getting that data on a monthly basis, now you're getting maybe quarterly or even every 6 months, depending on how quickly they get it to you.
Yeah.
Has that had an impact? Have you had to make other adjustments?
No, I think, once we got past that initial deficit, then, I think we're going to be just fine. Again, it's a little disappointing in terms of the data bill, look historically. So we're going to have to just change to being able to report that quarterly and move forward. And it relies on our partners. So, we're connecting with Springfield and Eugene, everybody, because they all get their own individual checks and their own individual reports. And so then we got to aggregate it before everybody got this nice report from the city that we're all familiar with that work with that stuff. And so, you know, I don't know, it's a change, but I think going forward, it'll be fine.
So you weren't relying like on that monthly data to then make other like decisions on like where you're gonna place revenue?
No,
So it's not gonna delay any of those?
no.
Okay. Thank you.
What are the top 3 takeaways you'd like us to walk away with?
Well, there's, I guess that's a good question. I hadn't thought about it that way. I think one is I'd love to see you go visit our website and learn something new about Lane County. I mean, I've lived here 45 years now, and I learn something new all the time. So I'd encourage you to go explore a little bit. Secondly, if there are opportunities, you know, all of us are involved in groups like this or other professional associations. If you have ideas for us about bringing a meeting here, we'd love to hear about it. I mean, it's just like with these sports tournaments, all the people that have kids that are yarding their kids to Salem or to Boise or to Spokane for volleyball tournaments or baseball tournaments. What if we got this facility built here and some of that was coming here and our folks got to stay home and not have to travel and spend that money? So, you know, what are those opportunities that we have if you've got some ideas about bringing a convention here or another sporting event or something that I just read about some other new sporting event that happened. It was under the Washington Jefferson Street Bridge last week, and I'd never even heard about it. It was called, I think it was bicycle polo. Did anybody hear this? There was this huge bicycle polo tournament under the Washington Jefferson Street Bridge, and I guess it's this huge thing, and there's a club here. I'm thinking, I'd never even heard of it. So, you know, there's all sorts of unique kind of sports events, but I think conventions is more something that we can all think about. So that's 2 things. You know, if you're interested in, you know, this indoor sports facility, and you want to learn more about it, I'd encourage you to go to the Sports for All Seasons and learn about that. You know, we're in an interesting position with respect to this development of an outdoor stadium. We all love baseball like everybody else. We had our hotel sector lined up to increase the lodging tax 2% to help build the indoor facility. And then the EMS thing came along and they kind of shifted that. And now they're proposing using 1.5 of that 2 points to build the outdoor stadium. And they've still got a $43 million gap. So it's a $105 million project. And if they use 1.5 of the 2%, then, you know, something like the indoor facility is probably a generation away. I mean, so.
You're talking about the M stadium versus this other.
Yeah, and again, we don't want to, I mean, we'd love to see both get built, you know, and we encouraged, you know, in other places like up in Spokane where they built a new indoor facility and they're making money on it in year 2. Their state put up 60% of the money. You know, around these private baseball stadiums or any kind of professional baseball stadium, I don't know if you follow this stuff, but they don't usually pay off very well for the communities. And so, and that's not a reason not to have them. They do bring great value in terms of family entertainment and in particular as an organization is a tremendous community partner. They do a lot of great things.
Can they fit in the Drucker Stadium in Hamlin?
No, they don't. They looked at that. And so I think, you know, we're put in kind of a difficult position to say, we don't want to be saying, you know, this or that. We'd love to say both. And we just got to kind of figure out how to come up with that funding for that. So, yeah, if you want to learn more about that, if you have any questions, there's some opportunities to kind of weigh in on that in the future. But
It sounds like this the supports for all seasons, that's gonna help solve the dip.
Yeah, that was why.
Or the M's wouldn't, because they're summer.
Yeah, and that was the reasoning behind trying to kind of work towards that. And if the indoor facility included an indoor track, then you've got a built-in kind of 3-month window where we kind of can guarantee that it's going to be used very well. Indoor track also allows us to probably get high school indoor track sanctioned in Oregon by OSAA. So right now, any high school athletes that want to do indoor track have to go out of state in the winter. And so that'd be another benefit, in addition to, again, all the other kind of activities you can host in these things. Youth sports it's just a really another kind of unique niche that if you follow it at all, the billions of dollars that are being spent across the country for facilities for youth sports is just kind of mind-boggling. It's sort of this analogous to this kind of collegiate facilities arms race that's going on. But the benefit is that you've got facilities for your kids to stay active, and it serves the community in a lot of ways. So hopefully we can figure out ways to get it all done and just keep growing the community. All right, thanks.
All right, well, thanks, everybody. I think, we will be sending more information out via our newsletter on upcoming programs, so keep an eye out for that. And anything else? Okay, great, thank you.
Sure.
Yes.